Okay, we'll give everyone a few more minutes to go ahead and get checked in, and then we will go ahead and start the webinar in another minute or so. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome from the North San Diego County Association of Realtors, and thanks for attending our Multicultural Markets Driving Homeownership with Freddie Mac this afternoon. Please note we do have 3 upcoming webinars regarding cultural differences, featuring the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, Asian Real Estate Association, and also the California Association of Real Estate Brokers. To register for these webinars, please go to www.nsdcar.org/webinars. And now we'll go ahead and get started with today's webinars. And Carmen, take it away.
Thank you so much, Shirley, and thank you to all of you for joining us today. My name is Carmen Mercado. I'm an affordable lending manager at Freddie Mac. My roles and responsibilities is realtor outreach, putting events like this together so that we can make sure that we're putting the information in front of real estate agents such as you that are really the boots on the ground, making a difference every single day. What we wanted to talk today, what we're going to do, I have my colleague, Marlena Scott, who is also on, and we're going to divide this presentation, and what the agenda is going to look like is going to cover a lot of data that is going to talk to you about the demographic shifts, the opportunities within each of those demographics from a business opportunity, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about products and resources and tools that are available for you to go ahead and share with your future customers, or what we call the borrower of the future. Once we're done with our presentation, what we will do is go into a natural dialogue, sharing some of our personal experiences as well as some of our professional experience, and give you some insights into our perspectives of how you can leverage the information that you've heard today, giving you some actionable items that you can actually put into practice once you're done attending this webinar. Then if we have time for some questions, we'll be happy to entertain those as well through the chat feature. And on the behind the scenes, I want to also say that we have my other colleague, Monica LaCrue, who will be dropping in the chat some of the resources and information that we'll be discussing so that you have immediate access to these resources. So we want this to be something very beneficial and something that you can put into action immediately. So without further ado, we want to really talk a little bit about the multicultural markets as a driving force and the impact that women, millennials, and minorities are having not only in the household formations, but also in purchasing the properties. But before we do that, we do want to kind of tell you a little bit about Freddie Mac. You know, who are we? What is Freddie Mac? And how do we impact your business every single day? As many of you know, we do not sell loans or originate loans directly to the buyers that you're working with. Freddie Mac was chartered in 1970, And it really had a mission, and that was to make sure that we were providing and continue to provide stability and liquidity in the marketplace. We work in the secondary markets. As I mentioned, we don't lend directly, so therefore your customers wouldn't be working with us directly. But our mission is not, is so important even more now in the environment that we're in, especially during this pandemic, in stabilizing communities, preventing foreclosures, and providing really credit accessible and sustainable for buyers that may be in a position to purchase properties. We have three main lines of business, and that's the single family, multifamily, and the capital markets. Marlena, Monica, and myself, all three, I should say, are part of the single family unit. But we do speak to each other quite often in terms of the opportunities that are out there. Some of you may be aware of Freddie Mac for depending on the focus that you have in the real estate community. But we do play a role every single day because we purchase these loans from the lender. So we create underwriting guidelines for our affordable products. And then our lending partners across the country will leverage our products to make credit accessible to the buyers that you're working with and be able to originate the loans. What we do then is that we do take those loans back and we go into the capital markets and the secondary market to find investors who are going to purchase that loan. That liquidity allows the lenders to continue lending every single day to the buyers that you're helping with in your transaction. If that liquidity did not exist, it would really limit the number of buyers that would have access to a 30-year mortgage. So although we play kind of a back end support, we are involved in your transaction every single day. With that, what I wanted to do is take a look at, well, what does that buyer look like? What does the future look like? And what are some of the things that we should be thinking about as we're trying to build the business? Well, you're trying to build a business for the future buyer pipeline, right? We rely on individuals like yourself to really take this information in and be able to share it. So we pull data from different multiple sources. One of the things that we look at is, what is driving home ownership? And you are on the ground, so you know this even more. You're feeling it, you're working with these buyers. So we look at internal data. We have a phenomenal research team, but we also look at some of the external data, such as what NAR puts out there. When you look at the NAR data, actually the NAR 2019 home seller and buyer profile, it showed that one of the largest groups of home buyers were coming from the first-time home buyers. When you take a look at the average first-time home buyer, it made up 33% of all the average sales. That's a large percentage. When you dig a little deeper into the report, if you haven't downloaded it already, I do recommend that you go and download it as one of your benefits as a realtor. Go in there and download the full report. It has some amazing information. What I found really interesting that when you looked at the first-time home buyer, even though the average age for all buyers, not first-time home buyers, all buyers was 47, the cohort that was driving that first-time home buyer was under 29 years. 88% of the first-time home buyers were 29 years or younger. So I want you to think about that for a second, because as we're looking at what that future buyer looks like, it's a much younger cohort. And we're going to talk about some of the data about the first-time home buyers, some myths, and some things that you can do to break down some of the barriers to home ownership. Another interesting fact was that 12% of the home purchases were actually multi-generational. I would love to see this data once we resurface out of COVID to see how much this will increase or the impact that it would have on the multi-generational households. A lot of millennials and even Gen Z that had left their home and maybe had their own leases, some wanted to come back home to really exercise the stay-at-home orders. So will it be interesting to see what these numbers reflect in the 2020 outcome. Veterans represented about 20% of all buyers, and 3% were actually active duty members. So it's important that as you're working with your buyers, you understand all the products and resources that are available to all the buyers that may have some benefits that they may leave on the table unexercised. So when we take a look at the optimism, amongst young buyers, there are many times that we think about they don't want to buy, they have too much student debt, they're not interested in purchasing, or they do not have enough money to save for a down payment and closing costs. When you look at the optimism, again, I have to preface that this was pre-COVID, you do see that between the millennials and Gen X, which are old enough now to actually purchase their home, the total 35% really were optimistic about purchasing a home within the next year. Again, we understand that the world, it is in a completely disarray. But on that note, is also interesting to see that many reports from different studies that show that individuals that have not been financially directly impacted during the pandemic that we find ourselves in are saving money. And because they may not have extra expenses, whether that's commuting expenses or just other even entertainment, they may be putting these monies aside. And post in the world where we're post the pandemic, being able to put these dollars saved actually into home ownership. So I want you to think about that for a minute in terms of what are we doing as an industry? What are you doing as a realtor to make sure that we're educating this cohort to make sure that they know exactly what they need to do in addition to saving money in terms of credit. So what you're looking on the slide right now, it talks about where is that growth coming from. So when you look at the study and it shows you that the first time home buyer, 88% of that 33% is actually 29 years or younger. Take a look at the second set of columns that are on this slide, and you will see that the growth between the age of that first time home buyer is actually coming from the minority groups. It's coming from the Hispanic, African American, and Asian communities. So it's important to know that because as you're reaching out to these buyers, where you're reaching out to them, how you're accessing them, whether there's limited English proficiency in some cases, and in some cases they're not, but it's understanding where that buyer is coming from. When you take a look at the second set or the third set of columns, I should say, and the average home buyer overall being 47 years old, I want you to take a look at where is that growth coming from. If you look at the columns, it shows you the darker blue here, orange and kind of gold, shows you that the growth within that average total home buyer age of 47 is also coming from the multicultural market. So this is information that we like to take a look at so that we can go ahead and understand what the buying process is for these folks and how do we reach them. What you're seeing on the screen as well is that you're seeing the demographics. Freddie Mac worked very closely with NAREP, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, which Shirley discussed, my apologies. What we showed was that their report highlighted a couple of things that we wanted to share with you. Number one, the Hispanic homeownership rate actually increased for 5 consecutive years. What you also saw that 4.9 million Hispanic millennials will be mortgage ready if they were to apply for a loan today. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a few slides ahead and what the definition of mortgage ready really means. I want you to take a look at this information, and if you have not done so already, I do strongly encourage you to download the full report. Because they have just a lot of information there that can help you if you're looking to work with different demographics. So now let's take a look at the African American home buyer. Actually, although their home ownership rates have dropped and there is still a large gap and a lot of work that we can do, there's still a projection that they will account for 2.2 million of the nation's household formations between now to 2025. So when you look at this information, what you want to look at is the average African American, Hispanic, and Asian communities are younger. So they are also significant representation within that first-time home buyer cohort. When you take a look at the Asian American home buyer, they're accounted also to increase household formations from here to 2035 by 13.6 million new household formations. So what does household formations mean? When we talk about household formations, these are not necessarily individuals that are actually purchasing a home. These are individuals that are leaving their home to whether it's purchase and or rent a unit. So when we see the growth within the minority groups and the opportunities that exist for household formations, the questions we have to ask ourselves is what can we do to educate them so that they actually leave their nest egg when they are moving out of their one unit household to actually purchase a home instead of renting a home. So this is really important. They are one in 20 millennials are African American or Asian. And as you can see the numbers, You'll see within all of the demographics, they're a younger cohort overall. Again, seeing a larger representation in the millennial groups that's driving the first-time home buyer homeownership rates. When you take a look at the term mortgage ready, at Freddie Mac, when we describe mortgage ready, these are individuals that are credit visible. What does credit visible mean? Credit visible means that they are showing up on one of the three credit bureaus because they're using credit in one way or another. It could be a credit card, cell phone usage. So they're obtaining credit. Mortgage ready, we define that as someone having a FICO score of 620 or better, not having had any foreclosures or bankruptcies in the past 84 months, and no severe delinquencies. The other thing that's important to note on the slide that you're taking a look at right now shows you mortgage week. So when you're looking at mortgage week, what this tells us is that it doesn't necessarily mean that these individuals that are mortgage week have bad credit. So I want you to pause and I want you to think of something. When we looked at the first-time home buyers and we looked at the average age, and we also looked at the diversity within that group, one of the things that it really plays a role in terms of determining your FICO score is not only your history with credit, the types of line of credits that you have, but it's also the longevity, right? How long have you had that credit established? So if the demographic groups are younger in age, then you can see how that could impact their credit score. So mortgage week could mean that they are younger in age, therefore have less time of established credit. It could mean that from a cultural standpoint, their relationship with credit may be very different. And that's something to take into consideration. I joke around, but don't joke around so much. I do live in a multi-generational household. I am Latina and my mom lives with me. And although she has been in the US and she's been 16 years old, my mom still believes in saving cash at home. So this is a cultural nuances, and you do see this across many of the multicultural groups. So when you see mortgage weak, does not necessarily mean, don't jump to a conclusion that it means that they are just have bad credit or are unable. Sometimes just a little bit more education can help them prepare them so that they are actually fitting into the underwriting guidelines. When you take a look at the time that it takes for someone to save for a property, I don't know about you, but if I was looking at this chart and I was a future home buyer, I would ask myself, or maybe feel a little bit discouraged if I thought it was going to take me over 20 years to save for a property. But we do kind of contribute to that a little bit, because when you look at most mortgage calculators, they default to what? They default to 20%. So it's easy to see how an uninformed consumer can think that they actually do need 20% for a down payment. The truth is that they can actually secure a loan with as little as 3%. And if you look at how long it would take the different demographics to save for a 3%, it is a lot more optimistic. So therefore, I encourage you to help demystify that amongst all home buyers, especially within the first-time home buyer segment, because it's important for them to know that they can achieve homeownership with as little as 3%, and sometimes even less. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So we wanted to take a look at, we gave you a lot of national data, and we wanted to compare that a little bit closer to kind of what's happening in California, and also just a kind of Orange County and San Diego. So you can see that the average, age that we're looking at in terms of first-time homebuyer driving force, you're really a little bit kind of surpassing the average for the United States, 25 to 34, kind of that first-time homebuyer sweet spot, as I like to call it. You're over-indexing as a state. Again, you're over-indexing as well as in Orange County and San Diego. When you take a look at the minority share comparison across the U.S., no surprise, obviously, in California for all of you, that you can see the diversity, right, within. Actually, California as a state overall is a majority minority. And then you can take a look at the different percentages here in Orange County, and you can see it here in San Diego as well. There's a higher percentage of Hispanics and Asians in California compared to the nation across the board. And the higher percentage of Asian is in Orange County at 19.9%. And as you can see here, San Diego at 11.6%. When you take a look at, access to credit and access to be able to achieve homeownership, one of the things that we need to think about is what type of loan are they using to secure that mortgage? It really makes a difference because the type of loan that they secure can help them actually gain equity faster or can help them lose equity a little bit faster in the sense that they're not retaining as much equity as they can from the get-go. And I'll explain that in a minute. But when you look at the overall FHA loan, the majority of FHA loans are actually going more highly to African Americans and Hispanics. Hispanics have made a little bit of an improvement here, actually securing their mortgages through a conventional loan. But if you can see that there's still disparity there. Why? Because when we look at the FICO scores, we can see that across the board, they would qualify based on their FICO scores. And of course, there's a lot more detail that goes into the buyer, financial profile. But it is something that we need to look at. Is it a lack of education or a lack of offering of a conventional loan? This just shows you the opposite, that African Americans and Hispanics have lower percentages of conventional loans. And we'll talk about the benefits of a conventional versus an FHA. FHA is a great loan. It's a fantastic loan and it's great for many buyers. But there is another way to actually purchase a home, again, to retain some of that equity from the very beginning. We'll talk about that. When you look at the average unpaid balance, this chart that you're looking here on the screen just kind of shows you the unpaid balance. The average unpaid balance in Orange and San Diego County is higher than the overall in the US. No surprise to all of you, I'm sure, because you have a higher price point. I'm based out of Long Island, New York, so I completely can understand these higher price points and the affordability issues. When you take a look at the average borrower income, there's still a large gap between non-Hispanic white and Hispanics in California, actually 25,000 across the US. So there's a big gap across the board. That's going to also impact the multicultural market stability and affordability, especially with prices increasing across the board. So we need to, think about that as well. All of these things, although maybe slight across the board, they do have an impact on affordability, especially in high cost markets such as California, New York, and other coastal cities. Occupancy rate, this shows you an owner occupancy share comparison table. This shows you across the board in the US, owner occupancy versus rental. The orange representing the rental, you can see their lower rates. You're doing pretty well on owner occupancy, but there's still a lot of disparity around, across the board with the multicultural market. And this bears to ask the question, if we know that the average credit score overall in the US, it hovers around 700, depending on when you pull, you'll see 694, you'll see 719, but somewhere around there is your average national FICO score. And then when you take a look at California, Orange, and San Diego, you see they're very healthy credit scores. So when you compare overall, and we see that California is very diverse. So when you look at the FICO scores, and you look at the conventional loan versus the FHA loan, the question is why? Why are we not having different conversations with buyers so that they can potentially secure a conventional loan versus an FHA? And we'll talk, my colleague actually will talk about that in a little bit, about some of those benefits. So what we want to do is kind of really first talk about, what's driving. So we know that homeownership is being driven by first-time homebuyers. We kind of discuss the age demographics within those groups, and we see how they're impacting really every single transaction that you're doing. But we also have a second cohort that's actually a big driving force within the home buying segment. And we wanted to share some data from research and studies that we have. And for that, I want to bring on my colleague, Marlena Scott. Marlena will be driving you for the rest of the presentation. I will be back, and we will then go ahead and have a casual conversation with you about some of our perspectives and take some of your questions. So without further ado, please welcome my colleague, Marlena Scott.
Thank you, Carmen, and thank you for that great data and information, really setting the stage. So the next couple of moments that I'm with you, I'm going to tie it all together. And what better way to wrap up all of this information than to talk about the ladies and some additional breakout homebuyer segments. So we're going to take a look at this first slide, which is identifying the characteristics of these homebuyers. NAR's 2019 homebuyer profile has really identified what I call 3 trending breakout stars when it comes to homebuyers. That's single female, single male, and unmarried. unmarried couples. You can see single females are averaging around 17% of home buyers right now. Single males are following with 10%. And unmarried couples are at 17%. You can see specifically with the unmarried couples that they have really trended very highly in the last several years, really identifying that your traditional married couple, family, or profile of that buyer is shifting. So when you're planning out your business growth strategies, make sure you keep these home buyer segments in mind. On the next slide, we're going to go ahead and take a look at how the single female is actually ranking against all of the other home buyer households. So we're breaking down the impact the single female is making in the market. They are the second largest home buyer segment, with the average age bracket in the 65 to 73 holding 22% of that home buyer age bracket or home buyer bracket. Most of them actually don't have any children under the age of 18 at home. So that's one of the other features of that. But also I want to point out that in the 22 to 29-year-old age bracket, you can see 21% are actually made up of unmarried couples. So again, with all of this, the home buyers are shifting, and these different breakdowns are actually making a large impact in the market at this time. So where are the women living with the highest home ownership rates? We went ahead and looked at the gap actually between single women and single men. And you can see on this slide that where single women own more homes than single men. You have San Jose, Oxnard, Tucson, El Paso, Jackson, Mississippi, Lakeland, just to name a few. And what we also found was the single women buy homes for an average of 6% more than their single male counterparts. They often purchase more expensive homes, go figure, than men. And the median price of homes are about $200,450 in comparison to single men, which is at $189,920. So this really shows you that women as a whole are taking on the leadership roles, and they're really stepping into making these larger purchases. So when you are, again, planning your business, you want to make sure that you're taking them into consideration. And so at Freddie Mac, we took a look at how many are actually part of our purchase volume and our purchase population. And what you'll find is, or what we found was that 20.3% of the loans that we purchased actually were made up of single female home buyers. So after all of this data, we have to ask you, are single females on your radar? Again, they need to be. And so let's talk about some ways to address some of the home buyer data Carmen and I just reviewed. So now that we've wrapped up all this great data, you're probably thinking, well, what's next? This next section that I'm going to talk to you about is really bringing the education to you on what product solutions are available to help you at the point of sale make home possible for many buyers, to help you grow your business and to continue, or for you to continue to be that trusted advisor. Your role is very important. And so we want to make sure that you're equipped with all the information. So Carmen mentioned earlier the FHA, and that being a viable product solution for low down payment. I want to introduce to you the Home Possible mortgage that Freddie Mac offers. This is designed for borrowers for very low to moderate income, as well as first-time home buyers who meet the 80% area median income eligibility equipments. Knowing that down payments are an obstacle, Freddie Mac really thought this was important to be able to offer. For this, the property can contain 1 to 4 units. And the manufactured housing is also eligible with this. I want to point out really quickly for Home Possible that since 2015, we were able to put over 300,000 people into homes, make 300,000 new homes, which is pretty awesome. So what happens to those that are not, that don't qualify for the Home Possible? We then have our Home One product that you will see on this screen. Home One is for first-time home buyers, and there are no income or geographical limits. So this basically helps you capture some of those first-time home buyers who don't meet the qualifications for Home Possible, but still need a low down payment option. Home One is that option. This is for single-family homes. They also must be owner-occupied, and they're fixed-rate terms as well. The last affordable down or low option or low down payment option, excuse me, is our HFA Advantage. It's offered through state and local housing finance agencies which administer a range of federal housing, federal affordable housing and community development programs. This is based on the same Home Possible underwriting as well. And you can find all the details of all of this. I believe Monica just put that in there, but also you can go into the chat, but you can also go to FreddieMac.com. And these three products can actually be layered with our duty to serve product offerings, which I will touch on in just a moment. So what are the overall benefits? Having these solutions in your toolkit will no doubt help you grow your business and help your clients get into more affordable products that they will thank you for, saving that money on the front end and building equity faster, because PMI is only required if the loan to value is over 80%. It can be canceled once the equity reaches 20%. It's not limited to first home buyers. There's flexible sources of funds. And again, it supports manufactured housing as well. So there really are vast benefits, and it can help you continue to grow your pipeline as well. So how do you know if your buyer is qualified and meets the 80% area median income? We created the Home Possible Income and Property Eligibility tool at Freddie Mac. This tool is how you find out if they meet the criteria for Home Possible. It's a very simple tool that only requires you to input the property location. For this example, you'll see that once the property information is actually input, it loads, you will see that not only the income limits are identified, but you also see what down payment assistance is available, which can be extremely helpful if your buyer, for whatever reason, is having questions or doubts about the down payment they'll be able to come up with. And through our partnership with Down Payment Assistance, we were actually, that I mentioned, if you go to the next slide, thank you. As I mentioned on the previous slide, for the Home Possible tool, we have down payment assistance available. This is a great tool for you to leverage. You can simply input the property address to see what federal, state, or local down payment assistance is available to you, to your home buyer. So basically, you're connecting your home buyer with money to help them achieve the American dream, which is really a great free resource. You can also use this in your day-to-day business. You can actually take your listings and plug in the addresses to see what down payment assistance is available. So when you have that home buyer who is inquiring about the property, but maybe has some questions about how they'll be able to the down payment options available, you can have this information readily available to help that home buyer get into their home. So with that, I spoke earlier about our duty to serve initiative, which really is a plethora of products that are available to help us with these ever-changing times, which we're experiencing now, the shortage of inventory, the aged housing stock. Right now, 80% of US homes are at least 20 years or older, and 40% are at least 50 years or older. So at Freddie Mac, we felt that we needed to come up with a product solution that can help people help clients visualize their American dream with just a little bit of hard work, or with a little bit of work and their help from Freddie Mac. So we have our choice renovation. This product allows for a renovation cost less than or equal to 75% of the appraised as completed property value. It's a great solution to offer for older homes, of course, and really to help. It doesn't need to be the renovations don't need to be complete before close. And also with closing, there's a single transaction involved too. Many people are using their personal funds or credit cards or home equity loans to do all of this. So what better way to help them offset those costs and not get into any sort of issues down the road than to offer them a renovation product solution. So some of the eligible renovations are home repair improvements and resiliency, as well as energy efficiency features. The proceeds may not be used to raise an existing structure and build a new dwelling. So there are some specific outlines for personal property with the exception of new appliances. And renovations really must be comply with all applicable state and local laws, of course, and regulations, as well as zoning regulations, and permits and approvals must be obtained as well. The next product that we created through our Duty to Serve initiative was energy efficiency, for energy efficiency, which is Green Choice. This is one of my favorite products because we actually are able to address with the aged housing stock ways to help buyers handle with the windows and some of the higher energy costs that are associated with older homes. So if you can go to the next slide, I will talk about which ones, what's actually included of that. So some of the improvements included in the energy report or basic energy efficiency improvements are listed. So you have the programmable thermostats, you can have air sealing, solar panels, low flow water fixtures, as well as just windows and doors and what I mentioned earlier. So these products really help us to address, will help you to address some of the challenges that the buyers are seeing right now through, again, the aged housing stock and the inventory challenges, helping them really see their home with just some upgrades or improvements. Next slide. So I know that we covered a lot, and you don't have to worry because we have all these resources. You need to stay in touch with Freddie Mac. So we actually have created a resource center specifically for real estate professionals. You signing up for this, you will be able to receive all of the latest information from Freddie Mac, learning about our industry trends, some of the ebooks that we have available on some of the studies that we do, any events that we might be having in your area when we are back to meeting in person, and just resources you need to help your clients on your day-to-day business. So I advise you to go ahead and sign up for that. In addition, we've created customizable marketing templates to help you grow your business. They come in English as well as Spanish, and you can just download these and use them in your business. The next slide. So this is my favorite resource. It's My Home by Freddie Mac. This website actually is great for first-time home buyers. It really addresses all of the ins and outs of the process. It also helps the consumer walk through which is better for them, renting or buying. Now, this is great for your clients because there isn't anyone else who can actually market or come in and take any of your clients away from you. This is just strictly for consumers. There are videos that are covering key facts of home ownership, and there's helpful infographics on housing specific topics. So definitely a great resource for you to have and keep in your pocket. Next slide. Homebuyer U, we just came out with this in 2019. This curriculum is offered as an interactive platform for first-time home buyers. It meets the education requirements for Home Possible and Home One, and it's 6 modules, each focused on different learning principles, such as credit, money management, and how to sustain and preserve your home, which is one of the most important things. I have taken it. I really, really enjoy this. It right now is offered in English, but I definitely suggest you get familiar with this because this is a great curriculum for first-time home buyers. So Carmen referred to Mortgage Ready and Mortgage Week earlier in the presentation. Credit Smart, our financial education tool, is an excellent resource for you to help help those that are identified as maybe mortgage weak. This helps them helps clients get ready for home ownership by understanding their budget, their debt management, understanding credit and how that relates to home ownership. It's available in multiple languages and it's free. And the other piece of this is that you can actually become certified yourself to train this course. 4 times a year, we offer Credit Smart Train the Trainer session, where you can actually become certified to take this and put this into your homebuyer education strategy that you do with your local, in your local market. You can take this with you to schools, to the local hospitals, wherever it is, to hold some of these homebuyer educations and help people get ready for home ownership. So overall, you are the critical link, and we want to, at Freddie Mac, be that partner that you have that can help you bring more home buyers to the table. It's really important more than ever to continue to be that trusted advisor, which you all are. You're a crucial part of the housing ecosystem. We have a lot of myths that are still out there that we need to dispel, and so we want to help you do that, especially when it comes to the 20% down, which Carmen talked about or spoke about earlier. So really want you to take advantage of whatever you need from Freddie Mac. Head to our website and see what trainings are available. But we thank you so much for your time and thank you for being a valued partner.
Thank you, Marlena, for that, and thank you, Monica, because I do see that you're entering, the kind of the resources in the chat. What we're going to do now is I would like to just kind of really go through a Q&A right with you so that we can talk a little bit about different perspectives, and then we'll definitely look at some of the Q&A that may be coming in and answer as many of those as we can. If for some reason we don't get to it, as I said, please make sure to send them in. So why don't we go ahead, Marlena? I mean, we've been in this industry now for many years in different aspects, but I figured why not start, with some just casual conversation to even bring the information that we sent to light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot to unpack. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Great. So, just a little bit of background. I, as I briefly mentioned, because I wanted to make sure that we covered the content and had enough time for this dialogue, right? I've been in this real estate industry as a realtor myself for, oh my God, 19 years. I don't practice anymore, obviously, because I work at Freddie Mac. But, I try to look at things from a perspective of the realtor, right? Is really understanding what the realtor perspective is. But when I look at you, Marlena, and I've gotten to know you, I know that you yourself became a recent homeowner. So I like to bring real stories and real conversations, right? And that's what this is really about. So as a recent first-time homeowner, how was that process for you? And what was your experience overall?
Yeah, so I think, of course, I had an advantage because of the background. I've been in the industry for about 14 years overall. So I really knew what to expect coming into it. But what I want to point out is I'm a millennial. And so sometimes, when you're first looking, you're thinking, oh, I can do this on my own. But I really did need that real estate agent to help there. I mean, I trusted him throughout the entire process. But home buying right now is hard. It's a long process. Overall, it took about a year to find a house. And of course, you're looking for that perfect dream home. And sometimes you're realizing it's not necessarily true when you're factoring in affordability. I found a lot of aged houses. I found a lot of things that need to be worked out. But once we found the house, we relied on our realtor to really navigate us from there. Also in this housing industry, right, or this housing market right now, there's multiple offers taking place. So our realtor knew that we would have to come in at full ask because there's so much negotiating that happens. That's intimidating for a first-time home buyer because they don't know how to really navigate. They want it to be simple, take my offer. And that's not realistic nowadays. So thankfully, the seller took our offer. But that's definitely an intimidating factor for a first-time home buyer. And so it's important for the realtor to be able to explain all of this. And so we had one that took the time to explain how we needed to go through this process. Really just, I know sometimes, like again, millennials, we feel like we don't need the hand holding, but we do. And so we want that support because it's a big decision. It's not something that, to take lightly. And there's a lot of things to know, through the process. So
Yeah, no.
Carmen, so Carmen, you, as you said, talk about you're a realtor. How about you and your perspective from a realtor's point of view, as someone who sold real estate and worked with first-time home buyers? What or how did you make that process less stressful or intimidating for buyers you worked with?
Well, Marlena, sorry I couldn't be your realtor because obviously I work for Freddie Mac. But I would tell you, it's when I was working with first-time home buyers, when I started in the real estate industry, I was new. So I defaulted to the buyer side, which, as all of the folks that are on, a lot of real estate agents do when they first start because they feel more comfortable talking to buyers than maybe going on a listing appointment. So I call that it was a blessing in disguise for me because number one, it gave me the opportunity to learn a lot. But one of the things I used to try to do, I tried to reflect when I was a first-time home buyer because I became a realtor after purchasing my first home, and which many realtors do. So what I try to remember was what were some of my anxieties when I was buying. And for me, honestly, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what was available. I knew I had to get a loan. I knew I had to, work with a real estate agent, but I really didn't understand the process. And sometimes, our prides, the buyer's prides can get in where you don't want to admit to what you don't know. So as a realtor, what I tried to do was turn the kind of a reverse psychology. So what I would do when I worked with any buyer, I would kind of start from a balance of zero, right? And I would build up from there. I would really put them on a safe island. My approach was really to, ask them what were their needs, what were their wants. Have they ever bought a home before, right? That would identify whether they were a first-time home buyer or not. And I would ask them, what do you know about the process? What have you heard? Is there anything that, I think there was more questions that were more about creating that relationship. Is there anything that makes you anxious about this process? What's the best way to communicate with you? And I would always try my very, very best to always have literature available that talked about the home buying process. Some of it my company offered, some of them was that I made up, wrote down myself, right, and created these documents in what I call the buyer packet. And I would just give them information about first-time home buyer programs or anything that I had access to from a knowledge base. Because if they were in a position that they didn't feel comfortable, I just hopefully made them feel a little bit more comfortable because they're like, okay, you know what? I don't need to know it all, right? And I used to tell them that. I used to say, here's a list of the real estate professionals as a whole that you're going to need throughout this process. I used to call it like from looking for a property to closing. Who's going to be part of your team? Whether that was not the appraisal, the inspector, the obviously the insurance company for homeowners insurance, all of these things. And I would say, if you don't have a team already of individuals that you trust that are going to help you with all these different pieces, an attorney and so on. This is a time while we're starting to look for properties to talk to them, to get to know them. And I used to tell them, it's okay for you to speak to an attorney and not agree that that's the attorney is going to represent you. You can interview them and make sure that number one, they serve primarily real estate. But secondly, that they're going to have a good communication flow with you because it's important. They're going to be an extremely important part of the process. So I think that was my way of, I assumed that every buyer that was in front of me was coming with, just a same level of knowledge, but then I would discover where they were, but make them feel safe along the way. That at least those were the ways that I tried to implement.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. You talk about team, and I think having a team to help your home buyer, help or make them feel comfortable is really, really important in the process. I mean, because no one wants to feel like they're just, figuring things out in the dark. You know what I mean?
Oh, no, absolutely. So let me ask you another question, Marlena. We talked a lot about data, and I know that, I try to wear my realtor hat really. And, we go through this conversation even at work, right? It's like, let's make sure that what we're delivering is something that the real estate agent can take with them and put it into practice. But we talked about, one of the myths that you hear a lot, or I don't know, is it a myth? Is whether or not, when you look at the multicultural groups or even single females and millennials for that matter, you're a millennial. I'm a millennial with more years of experience. But when you look at that, would you say, I guess from a millennial and maybe minority perspective, as a realtor, as a real estate agent, do I need to reflect that? Do I need to be a millennial to work with you? Do I need to be a minority to work with you?
So I would say no. And the reason why I say that is you don't have to be part of the particular community, but you need to understand the community. Some of the things that we spoke about or that you talked about earlier, as far as the different nuances, if you will, within each demographic, understand that. For example, in the AAPI community, they're often buying homes for multi-generations. So understanding that they're probably going to bring their mom, their dad, maybe grandparents to viewing the home is really important. So I don't think you have to be part of the community, but you definitely need to understand that it's not a one size fits all market out there. And that's why it's really important for real estate agents to really prepare their business for these different demographics and strategize about how to engage with them. One of the great tools that we have right now that was recently created with FHFA, as well as the GSEs Fannie and Freddie, was the limited English proficiency tool. And basically what that does is that helps, because I know that language is often a huge barrier, that helps you to provide documents in different languages to help to make sure that they are, if someone is having that barrier, that they are able to know exactly what they're doing throughout the entire process. I think that speaks volumes by taking that time to provide those kind of resources to your client who may not, who may come into one of those multicultural communities. But I do think it's great and it's comfortable to work with someone who is like you, but at the same time, I think the education piece, the understanding is really key to building and working with those clients.
I'm gonna kind of agree with you on that. I having sold real estate and worked in a market where I was the only minority realtor in my office, worked with many great real estate agents that were not, and they had plenty of clients that were diverse and millennials and all of that. And it was about exactly what you said, is as the desire to learn more about that particular community, whether it's millennials, how they communicate and all that, or whether, to your point, it was limited English proficiency. So I'm glad that you mentioned that resource, because so I do forget about that resource every now and then. And, as the resource that you were talking about, and I think Monica dropped it in the clearinghouse translation. The other way, I used to and I still say that it's good to use is I'm bilingual. I speak both Spanish and English. And then, but there, I do think in English first. And I'm a real, from a real estate perspective, that's how I think. So there's some times that I want to think of a specific industry term in Spanish, and I can't think of it. And I'm fluent. I am fluent. And yet I'll be like, oh my God, how do you say that? In Spanish, I don't. So I do use it from that perspective, not even with consumers, just even for my own edification. So that was a really good resource. I'm glad you mentioned that. I forgot to talk about that.
No problem. So why do you think it's important, Carmen, for that real estate agents learn about affordable lending products? I know we talked about a bunch today, especially if they're not lenders. Why is this information important and relevant?
I bring that question up all the time, Marlene. I'm like, well, why should real estate agents care about all of this, especially when they're so busy right now? The market is hot. There's multiple offers, over asking price. But here's what I would say. I think about real estate as a very fluid business. So you have ebbs and flows as you're selling real estate. And, sometimes there's certain markets that are performing better than others, given the economy and all these other external factors. But one of the things that I think remains constant is that what I call the aspiring buyer. Right. So I feel that first time home buyer and that aspirational buyer that has not owned a home, not your move up, not your step down, those are important, like diversifying your business. But that constant flow of buyers that are entering the home ownership phase for the very first time, I think that really helps stabilize your income, right, as a realtor over time. But I also know that a lot of those first-time home buyers, especially in the low to moderate income space, which is kind of where you and I live in single family space, they're not all ready at the same time. So therefore, it does take a special kind of real estate agent to put in that extra legwork from the very beginning. But I'm also very realistic. You have to sell real estate. You are out there trying to make an income for yourself and for your family, and we want you to do that. So building a team around you that I call it I joke around, I guess my daughter did so much track. I think about it from a relay race. Right? You have different parts of that relay race, and you put, the right person for that part of the race, that portion of the race in that position for a reason. So I think that's the way I see it. You're going to have buyers that come to the realtor that are really kind of almost mortgage ready or ready to go, maybe enough education from the realtor. Some of the resources that we offer is enough. And that's it. And they're ready to go. And maybe in a very short term, they can do that kind of sprint on their own. But then you have the others that know they need a little longer. But what I call this is nurture your buyer pipeline, right? So the way I see that is if I'm selling real estate and let's say you come to me and you need a little bit more than that sprint that I can do with you because I have to, attend to my buyers that are really ready today. I don't want to say no. What I want to say is like, okay, here I have a team that can help you. Let's get you through this process. So I would say definitely engage with your local HUD-approved housing counseling agencies. Reach out to them because if you do have a buyer that needs a little bit more handholding, they can do that really in-depth financial training, right? And when they're done with that, then they come back to you. You're the second part of that relay, right? You're starting to bring them home. I think that it's also identifying the lenders in your space. You have some lenders that are very, very good at, let's say, VA loans. And then you have other lenders that are fantastic at renovation products like the Choice Renovation. So, like realtors, some are phenomenal at, luxury markets. Some are phenomenal with senior housing. So you want to find the team that identifies to all the diverse buyers that are going to come through your table. And don't wait until it's in the middle of the transaction. That's the worst time to learn because you're stressed, your buyer's stressed. So if you can build this team, and I say this, and now virtually you can meet with everybody in one day, set up these meetings with housing counseling agencies, get to know what they offer, understand, lenders use Home Possible, which is our affordable product, but some of them have portfolio products as well. So learn, what do they have down payment and closing cost assistance programs that are available? What are the guidelines? What are some of the restrictions? And I think that I call it that, the more it's like when you take that energy bar right outside and go like, okay, this is going to boost. That's a grant. That's a down payment assistance. That is all they need to boost their buying power. And if the more the realtors create that kind of external network, that would be my advice. And I used to tell, I managed an office for years, and I used to tell agents, especially the new ones, Marlena, it's like, look, you're not going to have the answer to everything. No one's perfect. No one has the answer to everything. But you should have a team of professionals that can support your business so that you can help more buyers achieve homeownership. So, I would say leverage all our resources, even outside of Freddie Mac. We have there's tons of resources available, even through your state association of realtors. They have great information. So I know we're at the, and I can talk to you forever, and I can talk about this forever because I'm very passionate about this. But I do know that there was one question here, and it was more generic, so I'll just answer. It was, some of the statistics and demographics that we share, are they from HMDA data collection? We actually have an internal research and analytic teams. We have the chief economist's office. So our data gets pulled from HMDA and Census and so many other resources, including some of the ones that Marlena shared, where she talked about, the loans that Freddie Mac purchased on the single female side. So I think it's a compilation of all of those data, and we look at it. What I think it's the difference on data is the lens in which the person is reading it through. And we read it because we are focused on affordable. Our lens, when we pull from HMDA and all those other different resources, and even our own internal book of business, we pull it with the lens from an affordability standpoint. So that was one of the questions that I had. I don't know, Monica, I know you're behind the scenes right now. If you're seeing anything else come through on the chat or in the questions, but I know we're about 1 minute out to closing out. Let me take a look. Marlena, do you see anything in the chat?
Nothing else in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you. So with that, I would say, honestly, I always appreciate the opportunity to be in front of real estate professionals that are hopefully as passionate as I am and Marlena and our team on affordable housing. For us, it's really about just helping one more homeowner achieve homeownership. You can't help everybody. I get that. But I hope that you join us on our mission to really make home possible for as many home buyers as we can. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over so we can close it out.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Marlena, so much. We really appreciate it. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.